Hi, I'm Bess Ho, the moderator. Welcome to our investment panel. I would like to introduce Edward King, VP of New Ventures of Inventec Corporation. Edward has launched over 25 new products that achieve 1 billion in revenues over a 20-year period by champion market analysis, building successful cross-functional and multicultural teams and directing product launches. We have a very nice chat about your background as a corporate venture investing in early stage seed,
Right,
pre-A, and sometimes Series A technology startup for the hardware sector. And your
right,
free member team, including your CFO, is tasked to find strategic investment to align your ODM business. Inventec is much bigger than Jabil and smaller than Foxconn and Flex. But like other corporate ventures, you never lead, but to
right,
follow. We talk about the failure rates, from your Flex experience. From
right.
1,500 hardware startup with seed money, there are only 70 startup you can work with. And from that, less than 1% of, the startup successfully manufacturing the product. And you identify three biggest, failure. First is lack of financial planning.
Right,
Second, founder teams. And third, pricing. Can
right.
you expand that, to our audience, and why did first-time hardware founders always fail? And let's start with financial, then founders and pricing.
Okay. Hey, thanks for having me today. Yeah, when we talked about this, my experience over the last 20 years with hardware startups has been not only on the investment side, but on the manufacturing side. And so the number one problem that we've seen is really lack of financial planning. Hardware is a very expensive game. And a lot of times companies and founders, they only raise money to get them to maybe the next round of financing, or to get them to mass production. And really, it takes more money after you get into production than you think. And this is where we see a lot of hardware startup failure, is because they don't understand the economics of scaling hardware beyond the tens and thousands of something to the millions of something. And they always seem to run out of cash, or cash strapped, or have to go back to markets to find cash, and they have to pause in their production in order to raise capital for that. And it's very disastrous for a company to have to do this kind of thing. Founder teams, the founders that have never done hardware before usually don't succeed, especially if they don't find somebody on their team or hire somebody on their team who has done it before. It's something that it seems like a lot of founders need to kind of pay their dues in the hardware business before. And one of the key things that we see quite often, a lot of hardware companies are very engineering top heavy. And the ones who have been more successful in the beginning, with my experience, are ones that also go out and find people who understand operations. They understand manufacturing, they understand supply chain, they understand fulfillment, and you don't have to hire, as a small startup, you don't have to hire somebody. Go out and find somebody who knows this to advise you, to be on your board of directors. Hire a consultancy so that you understand the economics behind hardware. You understand the processes involved in hardware development, and the whole back end logistics piece is something we call it the value chain. Right? You need to know all parts of the supply chain that add value into your product, and a lot of startups don't understand this out of the gate. Just because you can prototype something doesn't mean you can manufacture it. And so you need somebody to help you with that. And the third one we often see is pricing. So many hardware startups don't understand the price that they need to charge in the market in order to be successful. They design a product and then they decide based on the design, oh, the price for this design is X amount of dollars. Well, that X amount of dollars may never fit into a marketing model. It's usually better to do a top down and a bottoms up for your business to understand what the price point has to be. And you need somebody who really knows marketing in the electronics industry to help you know what price point you need to be successful and how you work to get to that price point.
Yeah, we also mentioned that there's a very good chance that your customer will return your product if your price is very high.
Yeah, and so this is the thing that people never factor in. You'll get returns if the price is high, but you'll get returns anyway, right? And a lot of startups don't think about after sales service. How do we service something after it's sold? The warranty, what kind of warranty do we offer? All right, how much warranty reserve do we have to take on our P&L in order to satisfy that? I mean, I've seen companies just drowned in returns because buyer's remorse, the price is too high, the quality is bad, and it will just sink a company. So you need to understand all of that before you actually launch.
I also want to mention a statistic, shared by another hardware founders who exit, his company, and his last company was on a smart home product, and his product return rate is 70%. Not
Yeah.
because he doesn't have a good product, he has a very good product, but as soon as the customer receive it and they open the box and they find the instruction is something that less friendly, they will box it up and return it. So most of 70% of their return are never used product, not even installed. It was unused and just open the box and ship it right back, and that's
Mhm.
70%.
Yeah, and you notice the companies that are really successful at it. Look at Apple, for example. They spend a lot of time on user experience, on solving a problem, and making it affordable for the kind of customer they're going after. A great example to follow.
Right.
Now we'd
I
like to
can add a
open up
little bit
other
to. Yeah,
panelists.
let me add a little bit about the on the inventory side. So a lot of people really look forward to getting orders from Walmart or Best Buy. They all have very tough terms. 90-day, basically, you have to carry the inventory. They don't pay you until they sell through. So basically, and then they have guaranteed return wherever they don't sell through. So this is another thing that a lot now is a catch-22 because if you get into a Best Buy or Walmart or Target, they can help you to sell a lot, right? Provided you have good quality products that people don't return, but still, it's not guaranteed. And the thing is, do you have the finances to stock 90 days worth of your product into a few of the stores, and then don't get paid, 90 days or longer afterwards when they actually sell your product?
Yeah, and Joseph, I mean, you've been in the manufacturing game. You know that I want to collect after 30 or 60 days, right? And
Yep.
so as a hardware company, you have to factor this in that you may have to pay the manufacturer in 30 to 60 days, but you may not get the payment from the end customer for 90 days. So you have to float this money, and it's very difficult to manage this kind of business, especially if you've never done it before.
Okay, so let me go on to the next question and then we can open up. So we talk about the hardware gross margin, 20 to 30% in order to stay in business. And sometimes, software business have an even thinner margin like hardware, like hot ride sharing startup Uber Lyft. They are making $1, $2, booking fee in each transaction. And those food delivery startup like DoorDash and grocery delivery startup like Instacart are making only $2, $3 service fees. So can you explain what are the most ignored costs by hardware founders?
Yeah, from my experience, uh, a lot of hardware founders and principles in the company have come from maybe the engineering side of a business, right? I left Intel and or I left AMD and I made these products, or I left Apple and I made these products. They had a whole group of people behind them to help them with it. And so they don't understand all the hidden costs in manufacturing. For example, every time I manufacture something for you, I have to test it somehow before I ship it out. But I need to rely on you to help me with the test equipment, to help rely on you to help me with what do I need to test, right? And then you need to figure out a warranty. If I offer a year warranty, how many of these am I going to get back? How do I service a warranty? How, firmware. Firmware costs can be outrageous sometimes, especially if you go to a third party to do the firmware. And there's always hidden costs in manufacturing. The one that is hardest for people to understand, if I manufacture for you, um, and we do it on a regular basis and ship you regularly, I'm actually acquiring a lot of material for you, and you don't pay for that until I ship you a product. However, you, under most contracts, are liable for this material. So you may have outstanding with me several $1 million in material plus 30-day terms. So you need enough money, cash flow, to be cash flow positive and still cover all this liability. And no one ever thinks about this unless you've done it before and
Yeah, and many startup actually didn't aware of the lab tests that you have to do in-house and third-party lab tests that you have to do before you go through the certification and pass, many safety certificates.
Yeah, and it depending on what it is, it can be, FCC is not that expensive anymore. But if you need something else, like in the healthcare industry, right? There's a regulation called IEC 60601 that has to do with equipment in a hospital. This can run you 60 or 70K just to get a certification. So all these things you need to think about and be able to find someone to advise you on this, or it's hidden costs that you never account for when you go to ask money from a VC or another kind of investor.
Yeah, I do like to, bring up when I was working on the hardware products, and many, were not realized that the wake work engine that you use for voice recognition, like Alexa skills and so on, no matter what kind of, voice assistant platform you use, you do have to pay for your own wake work license, and that costs money. That is
Yeah.
not free at all. The only free is, only when you have, 50,000 or, 100,000 unit production, and maybe Amazon will make an exception because you are a business partner and they will waive, the fee. Otherwise, starting out, you have to pay your own wakeware engine license. So I like your advice on hardware founders should pitch, CM at the same time when they pitch to investor. Your manufacturer works with hardware startup even in the alpha stage. You mentioned you don't decide based on MOQ, stand for, minimum ordering quantity, and it's
Right.
about revenue size and factory
Yeah.
utilization. And this is very encouraging for founders. Can you share the average funding amount hardware founders should prepare and raise to cover manufacturing and timing, and what happened to supply chain and logistic and shipping this year?
Yeah. From my experience doing this for a number of years, hardware, just to get you into production, you should budget $5 to $10 million, depending on what it is. And you need to find a manufacturer at the same time you're looking for a VC, so that you can factor all of this into your financial plan for when you do go out and look for funding. Otherwise, you're going to catch yourself short somewhere. And Inventec may be different. Some companies do look at like MOQ, but they give you an MOQ because they need a certain revenue. And so I don't really tell people I need an MOQ. I just need like a certain revenue number over a certain number of months. And part of this is to help plan inside our factory utilization. As a manufacturer, I want to make sure my stuff is my equipment is used 100% of the time. And so uh, I I need your help to help me with that internally. Otherwise, we'll both be caught short sometime. When you need something manufactured and my factory utilization at that time may be 100% or 90 something percent. So we need to work together for that. Let's see, what were some of the other questions? Oh, timing. So this is the other one I find quite interesting in the hardware startup community. Um, from when you have, I'll call it kind of like a beta unit, a minimum viable product. It sometimes takes people 9 months to a year before they can get to mass production. And some of it is what you talked about with Jackie at the very beginning, and what Jackie's trying to do is help people cut down on this time by engaging manufacturers up front to help them with their design or help look at their design. We call it design for manufacturing, design for manufacturing, design for test, design for supply chain, so that we can cut down this 9 to 12 months by some. So always budget that kind of stuff. And you know, if you follow the news now in hardware, there's chip shortages, there's component shortages, there's commodity shortages all over the place right now. And if you're a startup right now, you should be planning for that. You should be making sure that you have finances in place to actually put orders in now for materials, or you may be pushed way out. I've seen lead times now that are hitting 40 to 52 weeks on some components. That's a year from now to get some stuff. And then because of COVID, uh, we've had some logistics hiccups this year. A lot of people used to airlift product from Asia to the US, but a lot of that was carried on commercial flights. Since commercial flights have dropped, the logistics for air have also been cut. And so it's more expensive to ship. And because of COVID, a lot of docks in the US have been running skeleton crews to keep socially distanced. And for a while, we just watched the pileup outside of Long Beach of all these containers coming from Asia that couldn't dock. People couldn't get their product. So these are the things as a hardware startup that you have to look at. It's just not your product. It's how do you make it and how do you get it somewhere and the current situation.
Yeah, I'd like to mention that we were working on a sensor called ambient light sensor that tell how bright the room is, and we were using one or two brands of manufacturer. And by the time we are planning on the alpha, it turns out that the early design we can't use the same brand, and we keep saying that what happened to the part we cannot order, and it say end of life, and then we keep running into several brands and manufacturer that the same sensor, they actually end of life, means that if you order now you might get the last batch, but if you don't order now you will never get it, and the only inventory
Yeah.
you can find maybe is on DigiKey distributor, but it's very small quantity, only good enough maybe for a very small batch, and also not good, it's not enough for manufacturer. So when you design, you really have to look at the supplier, the part, and you have to have a very good strong relationship with manufacturer.
Yeah, and the last thing I'd like to mention, the geopolitical nature of things now. It used to be that a hardware manufacturer could say, well, okay, I'll do this, and then I'll just go to China and I can get good labor rates and I can just churn out huge volume. But that's not true anymore. You have to pay attention to the tariff schedule coming in from China. It can be anywhere from 7.5% to 25% on products. And so not only do you need to look at this, but you also need to look to diversify your manufacturing base, maybe outside of of China and look to other parts of Asia or Mexico or even sometimes Eastern Europe. And this should play into all your plans for funding, is figuring out this kind of tariff and where you're going to manufacture and the cost structure for that you need it for to manufacture, and bake that into your plans.
Yeah, that exactly go to your financial planning, because if you don't actually plan well for your gross margin, and the tariff, just eat up all your profit. Any other panelists like to share and jump in?